Be me, Philip, 28. Work a pretty standard software dev job. It pays the bills, lets me afford my hobbies, and keeps me from having to talk to too many people during the day. Life is stable, I guess. The only part that feels like a constant losing battle is the dating scene. It's sometime in the early spring, one of those miserable rainy weeknights where you feel like the whole world is gray. I'm on my couch, scrolling through the apps again. Don't even know why I bother. It feels like panning for gold in a river of mud. Every profile is a carbon copy of the last. Fluent in sarcasm. Just looking for someone to go on adventures with. You have to be at least 6 feet tall. My thumb just goes through the motions. Swipe left, swipe left, swipe left. It's a mindless, soul-crushing routine. You see pictures of women on top of mountains they probably climbed once 3 years ago. Bios demanding a sense of humor, but offering none of their own. After an hour of this, my brain feels like it's leaking out of my ears. I'm about to give up for the night. Maybe just watch some old documentary and call it a day. Then her profile pops up. Viola. The pictures are professional, almost too good. She's objectively attractive. I can't deny that. But the bio? Oh boy, the bio. It was a masterpiece of red flags, a symphony of warnings. Intersectional feminist, activist, she, her. Here to dismantle the patriarchy, one fragile male ego at a time. Your money is not a substitute for a personality, but it helps. The last line was probably meant to be a joke, but it didn't land like one. Normally, this would be the fastest left swipe in history. My thumb was already hovering over the screen, ready to banish the profile to the digital ether. But I stopped. Something in me was just tired. Tired of trying to be the perfect guy. Tired of crafting the perfect opening message. Tired of pretending to be fascinated by someone's trip to Bali. I had spent years playing the game, trying to be what they wanted. What if, for once, I just leaned into the chaos? What if I just treated it like a science experiment? With a sense of morbid curiosity, I swiped right. To my genuine surprise, it was an instant match. My phone buzzed in my hand. "You have a new connection?" I stared at the screen for a solid minute, half expecting the app to crash. Before I could even think of what to say, or if I should say anything at all, a message from her appeared. Well, just that. One word. No, hi, no, hey Philip. Just an impatient demand. I should have unmatched right then and there, but the scientist in me had already put on his lab coat. I decided to play along. I typed back something simple. Well, what? Her reply was immediate. Don't you know how this works? The man is supposed to start the conversation. It's on you to impress me. I almost laughed out loud. This was going to be even more interesting than I thought. I decided to keep it polite, keep it neutral. My apologies. I was just admiring your bio. It's very direct. What kind of activism are you involved in? This seemed to be the right button to push. The floodgates opened. She sent a wall of text about a protest she organized on some campus. It was against a speaker who she claimed was spreading problematic narratives. She went on about the emotional labor involved, how exhausting it was to be so chronically correct all the time. I tried to steer the conversation to something more normal, asked about her hobbies, what she liked to do for fun. Her answer was that relaxing was a privilege she couldn't afford in a world so unjust. Every attempt I made to connect on a human level was met with a political lecture. It was like talking to a walking op-ed column. After a few days of this strange, one-sided back and forth, I was starting to get bored of my own experiment. I was just about to ghost the conversation. Then she sent the message that changed the trajectory of everything. This has been a really draining week. All this fighting for basic human decency is exhausting. I feel like I deserve a reward. I knew where this was going. I could feel it in my bones. I sent back a non-committal, "Sorry to hear that." She continued, undeterred. "I know this amazing steakhouse downtown. They have the best cocktails. I've been dying to go, but it's the kind of place you can't really go to alone." There it was, not, "Would you like to go with me?" Not, "Are you free sometime?" It was a statement of fact, dangling in the air, waiting for me to take the bait. I took a screenshot of the conversation and sent it to my buddy, Jeff. Jeff is one of those guys who got cynical about dating long before I did. He'd seen it all. His reply came back in less than 30 seconds. "That's not a date, my friend. That's an invoice." I told him I knew, but that I was curious to see how it would play out. Jeff sent back a string of warning emojis. He said it was a classic foodie call, a term I'd heard but never really encountered in the wild. He explained that some women use dating apps as a free meal service. They have no intention of getting to know you. You are a walking wallet, an ATM with a pulse. He told me to unmatch and forget about her, but I couldn't. The experiment was too compelling. The hypothesis needed to be tested. I wrote back to Jeff, "I'm going. For science." Jeff replied, "Don't say I didn't warn you. Text me when she orders the lobster." I switched back to my chat with Viola. "A nice dinner does sound like a good way to de-stress," I typed. "When are you free?" Her entire tone shifted. Suddenly she was friendly, almost cheerful. She immediately suggested Saturday night at 8. She named the restaurant again. It was one of the most expensive places in the city, a place where a single steak costs more than my weekly groceries. "Perfect," I wrote back. "I'd see you then?" The scientist in me was giddy with anticipation. The normal guy in me was already mourning the loss of his dignity. The days leading up to the date were quiet. She didn't text much, which was a relief. On Saturday, I got ready, but not like I usually would for a date. I didn't stress about picking the perfect shirt. I didn't overthink anything. I felt detached, like an anthropologist preparing to observe a strange new tribe. I drove to the restaurant and got there a few minutes early. It was exactly as opulent as I'd imagined. Dark wood, leather chairs, waiters in crisp white jackets. I gave the host my name, and they led me to a small table for two in a quiet corner. I sat down and waited. 8 o'clock came and went. At 8:10, I started to wonder if she would even show up. At 8:15, I was thinking about just ordering for myself and enjoying a nice meal alone. At 8:22, she walked in. She scanned the room with a look of mild annoyance, as if she was the one who had been kept waiting. She spotted me and walked over. No smile, no apology for being late. She just sat down, put her purse on the empty chair, and gave me a quick once-over. "You look shorter in person," was the first thing she said. I just nodded. "Hello, Viola. Nice to finally meet you." She pulled out her phone and placed it face up on the table. The screen lit up every few seconds with notifications. The waiter came over to ask about drinks. I ordered a simple beer. Viola didn't even look at the menu. "I'll have a glass of your most expensive Cabernet," she told the waiter, without making eye contact with either of us. The waiter, a consummate professional, just nodded. "An excellent choice, madam." He left, and an awkward silence fell over the table. I tried to start a conversation. "So, how was the rest of your week?" She shrugged, her eyes still glued to her phone screen. "Fine." It was clear she had zero interest in small talk. The waiter returned with our drinks. He also handed us the food menus. I opened mine, already knowing what I was going to get. I had looked up the menu online beforehand. My plan was simple: order one of the cheapest things on the menu. Viola, however, was studying her menu with the intensity of a scholar examining an ancient text. When the waiter returned to take our order, I was ready. "I'll just have the classic cheeseburger, please, medium." The waiter nodded. He turned to Viola. She closed the menu with a soft thud. "I'll start with the seared scallops," she announced. "And for my main, I'll have the 12-ounce filet mignon, medium rare, with a side of the truffle mac and cheese and the grilled asparagus." I did a quick calculation in my head. My burger was about $25. Her order, not including her $30 glass of wine, was already pushing $150. Jeff's prediction about the lobster wasn't far off. Scallops and filet mignon were the next best thing. After the waiter walked away, she finally looked at me. She had a smug little smile on her face. "You're really just getting a burger at a place like this?" I just smiled back. "I'm a simple guy." "Clearly," she said, and went back to her phone. The next hour was one of the strangest and most uncomfortable experiences of my life. The conversation, if you could call it that, was entirely driven by her. She didn't ask me a single question about myself, not about my job, my hobbies, my family, nothing. Instead, I got a series of lectures. She complained about her job as a barista, how the customers were all entitled Neanderthals, how her boss was a perfect example of male toxicity because he once asked her to smile more. She talked about her roommate, who was problematic for watching a certain sitcom she deemed offensive. She deconstructed the inherent power dynamics of the restaurant itself, how the male waiters were probably paid more than the female hostesses. I just sat there, nodding and making non-committal sounds of agreement. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's crazy. I see your point. I was a blank wall for her to throw her opinions at. When the food arrived, it was almost comical. My humble burger on a simple plate, her mountain of food, elegantly arranged, the giant steak, the steaming sides, the artfully seared scallops. She didn't even seem that hungry. She spent the first 5 minutes taking pictures of her food from every possible angle, probably for her social media, to show off the lavish lifestyle she wasn't actually paying for. She took a few bites of the steak, declared it decent, and then mostly just pushed it around her plate. She ate about half of the scallops and a spoonful of the mac and cheese. The whole time, she continued her monologue. She explained to me that the concept of chivalry was just a tool of the patriarchy to keep women in a subservient position. Opening a door for a woman wasn't polite. It was an act of aggression, a subtle implication that she was too weak to open it herself. I found this particularly ironic, given the situation we were in. She seemed to see no contradiction between her fierce independence and her expectation that I pay for her expensive meal. It was a masterclass in cognitive dissonance. As the meal wound down, she ordered another glass of the expensive wine. I nursed my single beer for the entire duration. Finally, she leaned back in her chair, dabbing the corners of her mouth with a napkin. "I'm stuffed," she announced, despite leaving more than half of her food untouched. It was at that moment I decided to probe the hypothesis one last time. I needed to hear it from her directly. I leaned forward, putting on my most curious and innocent expression. "I find your perspective on this stuff really interesting," I began. "It makes me think about all these old traditions. Like, for example, the whole idea of who should pay on a first date. What's your take on that?" Her eyes lit up. This was a topic she was clearly passionate about. She put her wine glass down and looked at me, for the first time all night, with complete focus. "Oh, that's not even a debate," she said, with a dismissive wave of her hand. "The man pays, 100% of the time. Period." I pressed her. "Even if the woman is a staunch advocate for total equality between the sexes?" She laughed, a short, sharp, condescending laugh. "Especially then. Look, you have to understand, it's not about tradition, it's about equity, it's about reparations." "Reparations?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Yes, reparations," she repeated, as if speaking to a child. "Men have held all the economic and social power for literally all of human history. The wage gap, the glass ceiling, the systemic disadvantages. It's a massive debt that society owes women." She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Having a man pay for my dinner is the absolute bare minimum. It's a tiny, symbolic gesture, a microscopic refund for centuries of oppression. It's not a gift, it's a tax, the patriarchy tax." She leaned back, looking incredibly pleased with herself, as if she had just solved world hunger. I just stared at her. The experiment was complete, the data was collected, the hypothesis was confirmed beyond a shadow of a doubt. She had just handed me the checkmate. I gave her a slow, deliberate nod. "Wow," I said. "That's a fascinating way to look at it. You've given me a lot to think about." The waiter, as if on cue, appeared at our table. "Will there be anything else for you this evening?" he asked politely. "Just the check, please," Viola said, already pulling out her phone again, the matter settled in her mind. I simply smiled at the waiter and said, "Yes, just the check, whenever you're ready." The waiter returned a few minutes later. He placed a small black leather bill holder precisely in the center of the table, an unspoken rule of modern service. Place it neutrally, let them sort it out. Viola didn't even glance at it. She slid it across the table towards me with the back of her manicured fingers, a gesture of complete and utter dismissal. Then she went back to scrolling through her social media feed, completely disengaged. Her body language screamed, "This part of the evening has nothing to do with me." I let the bill sit there for a moment. The silence stretched. I could see her starting to get impatient, tapping her foot lightly under the table. I didn't reach for my wallet. Instead, I made eye contact with our waiter, who was standing a few tables away, and gave him a slight, polite nod to come over. He approached the table with a neutral, professional expression. "Yes, sir." Viola didn't look up from her phone. She was probably already composing a caption for her steak photo. I picked up the bill holder, opened it, and looked at the total. Just over $200 with tax. I looked at the waiter, my voice calm and even. "Excuse me, could we get this split, please?" The world seemed to grind to a halt. The soft tapping of Viola's foot stopped. Her head snapped up from her phone, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What?" The word came out as a strangled whisper. The waiter, a true professional, didn't even blink. "Of course, sir. Would you like it split evenly, or by what you each ordered?" I gave him a small, appreciative smile. "By what we each ordered would be perfect, thank you." Viola stared at me, her mouth hanging slightly open. The color was draining from her face. "What did you just do?" she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "I asked for separate checks," I replied simply, my tone still perfectly level. "You know, for equality." For a second I thought she was going to explode right there. Her eyes narrowed into slits. The mask of progressive superiority was gone, replaced by pure, unfiltered rage. "You cannot be serious," she seethed, keeping her voice down, but the pressure behind it was immense. "After I took the time to come out with you?" "You came out for a free meal," I corrected her gently. "And you said it yourself. It's not a gift. It's a patriarchy tax. I'm just exercising my right to refuse to pay a tax I don't believe I owe." Her face contorted. "You are the most pathetic, cheap, and fragile man I have ever met." The insults started flying, each one delivered with more venom than the last. I was a misogynist, a broke loser, an example of everything wrong with men. I just sat there and let her vent. I didn't interrupt, I didn't raise my voice. My calmness seemed to make her even angrier. It was like she was trying to get a rise out of me, and my refusal to engage was short-circuiting her brain. The waiter returned with 2 separate bills. He placed mine in front of me and hers in front of her. She stared at the small piece of paper as if it were a live scorpion. The sight of her own bill, with her own name on it, seemed to break something inside her. She pushed her chair back violently. "This is unbelievable!" she shouted, her voice now echoing through the quiet, expensive restaurant. Heads turned, conversations stopped. Suddenly, we were the center of attention. "I came here on a date. This man is trying to humiliate me. He's refusing to pay for my food," she announced to the room at large. A few people looked at me with expressions of disapproval. The man pays script is a powerful one. But my composure held. The restaurant manager, a tall man in a sharp suit, was at our table in an instant. "Is there a problem here, folks?" he asked, his voice firm but polite. Viola immediately launched into her performance. "Yes, there is a huge problem," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. "I am being harassed. This man invited me on a date, and now he's refusing to pay the bill. He's trying to embarrass me in public." The manager looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Sir, is this true?" I took a calm sip of my water before answering. I looked the manager directly in the eye. "Not quite," I said. "We did agree to meet here for dinner. We each ordered our own food and drinks. Now that the meal is over, I'm perfectly happy to pay for my portion. I believe this lady is responsible for hers." I gestured to the 2 separate bills on the table. "As you can see, I've already requested that we be billed separately for what we each consumed. My bill is for a burger and a beer. Hers is for scallops, a filet mignon, and 2 glasses of expensive wine." The logic was simple and undeniable. The manager's gaze shifted from me to Viola. He looked at the 2 bills, then at the half-eaten mountain of expensive food on her plate, then at my single, empty plate. His professional demeanor cracked for just a fraction of a second. I saw a flicker of understanding, maybe even amusement, in his eyes. He turned back to Viola, his tone now noticeably colder. "Ma'am, in this establishment, if you order food, you are expected to pay for it. The nature of your social arrangement is between the 2 of you, but your transaction with the restaurant is final." Her face fell. The righteous anger drained away, replaced by a look of panicked desperation. But he's the man. He's supposed to pay," she stammered, her argument sounding weak and childish in the quiet room. The manager was unmoved. "That is not our policy, ma'am. The bill for the items you ordered is yours." Defeated, she slumped back into her chair. The entire restaurant was watching. The public humiliation was palpable. She fumbled in her oversized purse, her hands shaking, and pulled out a credit card. I calmly took out my own card and placed it in my bill holder. The waiter came and took both. While we waited, she refused to look at me. She just stared at the table, her face bright red. All the confidence, all the smug superiority had completely evaporated. In its place was just a girl in over her head, facing the consequences of her own entitled worldview. The waiter returned with our cards and receipts. I signed mine quickly. I put a $20 bill on the table as a tip for the waiter. I wanted to make it clear that this was never about being cheap. It was about principle. I stood up from the table. Viola was still frozen in her seat, staring at her own receipt for nearly 170. I looked down at her one last time. My voice was quiet, just for her to hear. "For what it's worth," I said, "I really do believe in equality." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the restaurant on my back, but I didn't care. I walked out of the heavy oak doors and into the cool night air. A light rain was still falling. I took a deep breath. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt a profound sense of relief. It was like a weight had been lifted. For years I had felt like I was navigating a maze with no map, where the rules were constantly changing and always rigged against me. Tonight, for the first time, I had simply refused to play. I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Jeff's name. I thought about sending him a long message, detailing the whole insane evening, but it didn't feel necessary. I just typed out a simple sentence. "The patriarchy tax has been successfully evaded." I hit send. My phone buzzed almost immediately with his reply. "I knew you had it in you. Bar down the street. Your burger and beer are waiting." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. I put my phone back in my pocket and started walking towards the bar, leaving the steakhouse and everything it represented behind me. The experiment was over, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally gotten an honest result.